There you go.
Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and binaries, non-binaries, transgender females, transgender males, hermaphrodites of all Caucasian species, creeds, nationalities, and everything else. We're here on Axiom Flux tonight with, on this June the 18th, 2017, with Stav the man, as I call him, and we've got Paul Bridger with us. And tonight's topic is the Grenfell Towers, which I'm sure a lot of you have been looking into lately, to do with the apartment block in London, in West London, that recently burnt down. And it's certainly a very controversial subject tonight. There's obviously going to be quite a bit to discuss about, you know, the wheres and wherefores and wherefore art thous and why this happened and why that happened and all the very rest of it. Certainly there's a lot of stuff being questioned about it and why this, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but this building went up. It had a lot of new, well, not necessarily new, but it had a lot of cladding attached to the outside of the building. And this ignited, and apparently this block of flats in London went up like what do they call them, those fireworks, Russians something or others, I can't remember what they call them now, but this building went up in massive flames. And tragically, a lot of people died in this this blaze, this inferno. So we're going to be discussing tonight what happened, what caused it to happen, why was this not, you know, if this cladding was not fire retardant, why was it actually allowed to be put up? Why weren't there any sprinklers in the building, and so on and so forth? Apparently, the tenants were asked whether they wanted these sprinklers set up in the building, and the tenants apparently refused. They refused to have the sprinklers in the building, which is very strange. But having said that, I've been told by my council to have smoke detectors in my place, and I said, "Oh, do I have to?" And they said, "Yeah. Unfortunately, you have to. It's the rules and regulations of the council." So, and I don't like smoke detectors because they make a blooming noise all the time, and they, you know, they go off every time you burn a bit of cooking. So people, I suppose people would have reasons, whatever reasons, for not wanting these things, and it's something we're going to have to go into tonight. Anyway, let's say hello to Stav. How you doing, Stav? Are you all right, mate?
Yeah, not much luck tonight with this computer. My CPU's messing about. It's 100%. I don't know if I've got a load of, but it's and I've got the Hangouts open, so this might be in and out a bit. But anyway, apart from that, yeah, I'm fine. Apart from that, maybe it's time to smash this one, I think.
Well, we got Stav with some technical issues here tonight, folks, and hopefully he'll be with us for the remainder of the show. And we've got Paul. Are you doing all right, Paul?
Yeah, cheers, me old mucker.
Good. Right, so I think Paul's got something he'd like to share with us, some little articles and odds and sods, which may be of interest to our viewers. So if you want to go ahead and get the screen share up on what you want to do first tonight, Paul, we'll pass it over to you, mate.
Yeah, you know when you get that gut feeling that something just don't quite stack up?
Yeah, when something smells rotten in the state of Denmark, even though...
Yeah, it tickles your nostrils until you can't stand it. You have to look into it to try to work it out whether you're thinking on the right lines or not.
Well, so, some things definitely sound a bit suspect. You know, whether there's anything in that or whether whether it's us just being a little bit paranoid. It's obviously something we're going to have to look into and try and establish some sort of reason or motives, or you know, or what the hell was going on. Yeah, do you want to start with one of your items, Paul? Because you've got quite a few. We've got quite a few to get through tonight, apparently.
Yeah, I'm just getting my screen through at the moment.
Good man. We can. Well, something's going on. It says you are screen sharing, and it's
right. So, well, what I will actually start off is with the cladding parts of the cladding company and their regulation build for putting the cladding up.
Right. Well, we've not got your screen share up properly. Oh, we've got it up properly now. We've got it up properly. Rain screen cladding compliance guide. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah, this is it, and it's Celotex, which is the company that supplied the cladding, and it's the RS5000, and it's used in buildings above 18 meters of height. Yes.
Ah, right. Okay.
It shows you the how it's fixed to the building and how there's a gap in between, which obviously, if there's enough fire heat there and the updraft starts sending it up, it can build the fire up to high temperatures. But what gets me is what was the catalyst for the fire in the first place, as it's been said that it was a fridge freezer. Well, I've looked into fridge freezers and that they don't burn to a great deal of heat. But let me find the right one, gentlemen, because I've got a few here to look at.
You did mention actually earlier that, of course, on the back of a fridge freezer, you haven't got a fan or anything like that. What you've usually got is an element and a compressor, which
obviously denotes that it don't reach a great deal of temperature.
Yeah, because like in a computer, you've got several fans usually. You've usually got a fan on the CPU, and you've got a fan on the motherboard, and so on and so forth. So obviously.
So things inside the buildings, such as furniture and that, which is known as a carbon fire. Yeah. Well, if you can see my little cursor hand here, the room temperatures can range from between 1,000 and 1,500 Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Right. So actually during a fire, is it?
Yeah, well, that's where it starts combusting into actual flames.
Right, this is the cladding. This is the temperature at which the
no. This is just the carbon furniture fittings sector inside.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted.
Yeah, so what I'm actually showing here is the actual temperature before it actually bursts into flames.
Okay.
So it reaches a maximum of 1,500 Fahrenheit. So I would like to show you a few clippets here of videos. Whoops, I better get this one. Is just a normal plastic, and they call it how to make fire rain. Yeah. Okay. So I'll show you this one, and as you see, it's just a bare flame from a fire, from a cigarette lighter or matches or a candle, just to get this started. So I'll get it onto a large screen for you. And we click on it and we see how it goes, yes?
Yeah, we can see that fine.
The most common plastic in production today is polyethylene. Unlike chlorinated plastics like PVC, polyethylene burns cleanly because it's only composed of the atoms hydrogen and carbon. In fact, it's very chemically similar to candle wax. An interesting demonstration is to take a plastic water jug, making sure that it is marked as HDPE, and cut it into strips. When the strips are ignited, they rain drops of fire that occasionally make very unusual sounds. Watching these drops in slow motion reveals that it's not the drop itself that is on fire, but the tail of hydrocarbon vapor that follows behind. Most complex hydrocarbon fuels, like firewood, burn in this same way, though you usually can't see the vapor because it ignites instantly. There's much to be learned from this simple demonstration. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.
That's quite true, actually, Paul. Because hydrocarbons. Because plastics, any form, all these plastics and polymers and things like that, they're actually made from oil. So, and oil is a hydrocarbon. It's a hydrocarbon fuel, which means it's made from allegedly hydrogen, carbon and oxygen, which we're all made from. We're all carbon-based life forms, and we're all made from these three things.
So as you can see from that, before the drops actually hit the deck, it burnt out. So there was no actual flame there to actually start anything going, because it actually burnt out before it hit the deck.
Yeah, it was just catching like the fumes on fire or something.
Yeah. So that there is very little temperature involved in that. So to me, that does not create a flashover point for burning these cladding.
Yeah.
Getting the cladding started. So that does not seem to be the catalyst that got this cladding on the go. Now I'll show you the second video, and this time they are using a blowtorch. Now a blowtorch reaches up to the temperature of 3,000 degrees. So I'll show you this, and you can see it took 3 minutes to get this cladding actually going. So here we go. Here it is. I'll enlarge it for you. And as you say, look, it's 3 minutes and 1 second. And this is a blowtorch already on it before this timing actually starts. So it's actually more than 3 minutes, 1 second.
These blowtorches use what? Butane, propane, something like that?
Yeah, and they actually burn. The methane burns at 1,949 centigrade.
Right.
And the propane burns at 1,977 degrees centigrade.
So more or less two phases.
Yeah, I will show you in these panels later on that these panels need 300,000 to get going. So we're looking at another 10,000 degrees on over the top of this propane torches starting on this PIR panel now. So I'll show you how it goes about.
Okay. There's no sound on this video?
No.
For our viewers, could you tell us what PIR stands for exactly?
It's I'll show you later on. I've got it later on. I'm not very good on remembering big names and big words.
I know there's one acronym for PIR which stands for passive infrared, but that's usually
yeah. But this is to do with fire, so it's a different
acronym.
Yeah. As you see, look, it's now. Let's hide this. It's now been going for good nearly a minute. And there's no actual flame actually started on this PIR panel.
Right.
And that torch is burning at 3,000 degrees centigrade. Sorry, 300,000 degrees centigrade.
Right.
Which is well above the fire from a fridge or a carbon fittings from inside the apartment block.
One would think so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So this just does not add up that this fire was started by a fridge, and the heck of amount of heat that's needed to get those panels started in the first place.
I mean, there was questions like this attached to the 9/11 thing, wasn't there, about the temperature of being able to melt steel beams within the building. And we were told the official story of that was that the aviation fuel had
we're actually now taking 9/11 into taking that into consideration. Why didn't this tower block fall down like the 9/11 buildings?
That's a very good question, yeah. And it's funny because I've heard of buildings burning for weeks, literally days and even weeks, and the structure has remained intact, and regardless of how hot the buildings have got, they haven't like fallen into their footprints, so to speak. So it does beg the question with 9/11 as to what exactly brought those buildings down. A lot of people believe that it may have actually been a controlled demolition that took place rather than the planes hitting them.
2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes
Still
at 300,000 degrees centigrade here. Look, still no actual flames starting on this panel.
And that's one of these cladding panels that they used on that apartment building, presumably.
Yeah.
Okay. So although these things aren't exactly 100%.
3 minutes now, still no flame. So
although these things aren't 100% fire resistant necessarily, they often take an awful long amount of time before they spontaneously combust, as it were.
yeah, well, this was my thinking on this. It just did not add up what was being said. It just does not add up. We're being fed, spoon-fed normal as we spoon-fed normally a load of bull crap.
Well, do you know what? To give our viewers an idea of when things spontaneously combust, have you heard of Fahrenheit 454?
Sorry, say that again.
Have you heard of Fahrenheit 454?
Was that not a film?
Yes, but it's actually the as far as I'm aware, it's the temperature at which paper spontaneously combusts.
Right.
Even for a piece of paper to spontaneously combust or ignite, whatever you want to call it, it takes 454 degrees Fahrenheit to set a piece of paper on fire, and we all know how flammable, I should say, not inflammable. We all know how flammable paper is. So if it can take that, that it's going to take an awful high temperature to combust something like cladding and things like that.
A smouldering temperature here is between 1,000 and 1,500 Fahrenheit. And at that stage, it's black smoke. Yeah, when something is burning at a low temperature, it's black smoke. When you see white smoke, you know it's burning really high temperatures. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, they say where there's smoke, there's fire. That isn't always the case, I believe. But I suppose, like you said, you've got different types of smoke, and it's the same with metal melting points, isn't it? Because with metals, if you're melting a piece of metal, it'll reach one temperature and it'll glow a certain color, and then it'll go another color, like from red hot to white hot, before it starts melting or something like that. So there's definitely questions to be asked about what could cause something to raise to that level of temperature for it to ignite and cause a fire like this, or if there's nothing that would cause that temperature to be reached, then it begs the question: could it be what
was the catalyst?
Could the catalyst be something like an incendiary device? Now, if it's an incendiary device that caused this thing to ignite, then that would presumably mean that it's a deliberate fire that's been started, and then of course you have to ask the question,
why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Exactly, I was about to say that. It begs the question why they would do that and who would stand to benefit from that. And of course,
Q bono, who benefits?
Exactly. The motives behind that sort of thing, if that was the case. So we have to leave all options open and on the table at the moment.
This is why I've looked into all these different options, so I can actually show you that my gut's feeling. I don't think I'm wrong at all on my gut feeling. And now a candle flame, the naked flame of a candle, that's at the tip, because the tip of the candle flame is the hottest point. Can reach up to 1,400 degrees centigrade. So the bare flame of the candle will not actually start a panel going, as the panel, as you can see with the oxy torch on it, was burning at 300,000. So we're 1,600 degrees more needed if you're using a candle, yes?
Right, okay.
So right, we'll now go on to the actual here, look, yeah,
panels, can I just say something? I thought those panels could actually ignite from between 1,000 and 1,500, wasn't it? 1,000 and 1,500.
I'll check that out in a minute, but just to prove to you the heat of an oxyacetylene is an oxy-power blowtorch kit.
Right.
And it's the burning temperature just here, 3,000
centigrade. Okay, so centigrade, that would be more Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit level would be even higher than that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we're looking at a big discrepancy between the heats that are said that have caused this fire, such as a fridge fire, or even the carbon fittings inside the departments. Each building, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just another point. Now, here are the panels.
Right.
Yeah. The Zelotex RS5000, which claim that they used in buildings above 18 meters.
Yeah. Could we see that cross section? Could we see that cross section diagram, because that shows,
yeah,
you know how. Okay, so you've got the brick wall and you've got a layer of something in front of that. Presumably that's render, and then you've got cladding in front of the render. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, there's a space between. There's actually a space between the.
Yeah, which can cause an updraft, which will fan the fire to hotter degrees. But as again, it's the heat of the actual burning inside. There's a big discrepancy to get these panels going in the first instance.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, here's how they're fitted with the gap between, which can cause the updraft and a stoking of the heat of the fire, but it will only be a secondary fire that starts it. The initial burn there, which is here, will not start that off until it gets fanned, because there's not enough heat. The carbon fire is not enough heat.
You think that what they could do with that, I mean, in my mind, would be if you've put a building up and you've got the brick walls and then you've got the render on top of that, and then you've put this cladding up, you think that they could then put something in between the cladding and the render, like some sort of insulation, wall insulation, or something that's fire retardant, or you know, maybe something along those lines to insulate the buildings better and prevent fires, using the fire retardant actually in between the two, if you see what I'm saying. So that might have been something they could have considered putting in there. I don't know. I don't know how much that would take to do that, or, you know, it's just an idea off the top of my head. But
this Zelotex RS5000, their tests and what have you, actually passes these thermocoupling measurements are recorded at different levels on a tested system to establish performance against the set criteria. Failing to meet the performance criteria set out in BR 135 is deemed to occur if the system records temperatures exceeding 600 degrees centigrade for a period of at least 30 seconds within 15 minutes of the start time of a level 2 external thermocouples. Record temperatures exceeding 600 degrees centigrade for a period of at least 30 seconds within 15 minutes of the start time at level 2 internal thermocouple.
Right, let's also, you know, emphasize there that 600 Celsius is obviously a lot higher in Fahrenheit. Yeah, the Fahrenheit equivalent. So you know, so I don't know exactly what sort of temperature we're talking here, because I haven't got something to you know, just the the equivalent in Fahrenheit for that, but I should imagine it's probably quite a high temperature, much higher temperature than 600, obviously.
Yeah, so this fire really is what's known as an adiabatic process, and which in thermodynamics is the process one that occurs without transfer of heat of matter between. That means material catching onto material, catching onto another material. It means that it starts with a gap in between, so it's like it's thermo. It's the actual heat being pushed through the air, and the heat in the air.
Okay.
So if you're taking that into consideration, the flame has to be at a really extreme level for that process to actually start.
Right, right. So that does beg certain questions there. What exactly started that? It certainly doesn't sound like a fridge freezer could start something. I mean, as most people will be aware, is that all appliances produce heat. They dissipate the energy as heat. Even if it's a fridge freezer or a fridge, if you put your hand around the back of the fridge while it's running, you'll find that the fridge does get hot at the back on the element.
Yeah.
But like you say, there's no fans. All there is usually an element and a thing called a compressor, and the compressor is the thing that makes the noise on the back of the fridge or the back of the freezer. So
sorry, carry on. Sorry,
that's right. Now, I was just going to say that I put my hand on the element on the back of a fridge freezer or a fridge that's running many times, and it's never been even hot enough to burn my fingers. So, you know, that does seem a bit.
Maybe enough to warm your hands up when you've been out in the cold. Just
warm your hands up a little bit. I mean, not a lot, but you know, it does dissipate some heat, obviously, and it also produces cold inside the fridge or the freezer, obviously. But any appliances, even TVs, get hot at the back of the TV, and things like that. So they all dissipate heat. But what you have to consider is that modern appliances are more energy efficient.
Yes.
So as things become more energy efficient, they tend to dissipate less in the form of heat. So appliances don't get very hot these days, like the appliances of older days, which were very inefficient.
Yeah. Now this article is from the Sunday Herald, which is a Scottish publication, I believe. This is on the 14th of June, so it's quite a few days, so it's more or less straight as the fire more or less happened. This was the first report from them. And it says, tower insulation firm, material will burn if exposed to fire of sufficient heat. Now, they are not stating through this article at all what the sufficient heat is.
Right, okay.
Now, why are they not showing the sufficient heat to have started it when this is the fire that needs it to be explained to people what's actually gone down here?
Yeah.
Nothing of any temperature of sufficient heat. Wow, sufficient heat.
It's not very it's not very explanatory, that, is it? It's
no, so the media are not doing their jobs yet again. Obfuscation of the facts,
definitely. Certainly pretty poor journalism there. Is that which magazine is that?
The Sunday Herald. It's a newspaper.
I don't know much about that, so I know what the main tabloids are like. Their journalism can be a little.
Yeah, this is a main tabloid up in Scotland.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the more well-known tabloids, I should say, are quite prone to a bit of shoddy journalism at times. So it's nothing that new.
Yeah. Now we come to find out that the actual panels, they've gone for the cheaper stuff, which isn't so fire resistant.
It's not so fire resistant as fire retardant or the more expensive stuff then. So they've obviously cut a few corners to save a few bob, so to speak.
This is The Guardian.
Right.
And this article was on the 16th, which was the Friday.
Okay.
The 16th. That's this Friday just gone. And they've now come that the cladding for the Grenfell tower was cheaper, more flammable option.
Okay, so it's something.
Yes,
It's something
Sorry.
spontaneously combusts at a lower heat, obviously.
yeah, but yet again, still no actual temperatures stated. So they're still hiding the fact of temperatures, and people need to know temperatures.
Yeah, they should definitely be aware of the fact.
Look at it. All this, look, just a load of, it's just bulking it out. But no temperatures. The main important part of it is the temperatures. Just the same as with 9/11. Temperatures was left out all the time.
It's like this. It's almost like they don't want you to investigate the actual technical side of what's happened.
Exactly, because I think we're all dimwits.
Right.
And I know how hot things can get. I was ex-Royal Navy. I've done standard firefighting. You have to do firefighting in the Navy because you can't afford for there to be a fire on board and not know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, now this is a fire that happened in 2015. So we're talking 2 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're also saying it's the plastic again, a highly flammable insulation, which when ignited causes fire and spreads quickly. Yet, look at this low temperature burning. You can see it's low temperature burning. Was it this article? Have they got a picture of the actual? No, sorry, it's another article where they show the actual smoke. That's the fridge that they say caused the fire. Well, that looks like a real modern fridge to me.
Is that the fridge in Grenfell Towers, is it, or is this in another?
No, this is this person's in 2015.
Okay, right.
Yeah, they reckon started the fire that burnt his house down because of the plastic cladding on his house.
Okay, so this plastic cladding seems like a pretty dodgy stuff to have in general.
Well, yeah. Wait a minute, there's not that one out. Which one was it?
Is there any actual other purpose of plastic cladding other than cosmetic applications, if you like? Because
it all seems to be very aesthetic, don't it, and cosmetic, and
so
just for look.
That's the main reason for having cladding, just to make something look nice. Right.
Yeah, well, this is one of the reasons in Kensington, wasn't it? The fact that all the rich people in the area didn't like the grubby looking tower.
Ah, right, gotcha. Yeah.
I didn't like it because it didn't befit their area.
A bit.
All these incomers with the big bucks, the big dollars, the big pounds in their pockets.
So a bit of snobbery going on there. Oh, it looks common. Oh, we can't have that in the area, old chap. What, it looks rather.
Yeah. And not only that, when they come to fit
it, a bit more aesthetic, eh?
Yeah, and even then, when they come to pitch it, they decide to plumb for the panels that are £2 cheaper per square metre.
So they don't carry.
Which was a whole difference of about £5,000. So they're putting the value of somebody's life.
Aesthetic.
At £5,000. Yeah, we can save £5,000. Oh, don't worry about it. It may cost somebody their life, or life being plural.
Right.
Never mind that. Oh, we're going to save £5,000.
Just for the sake of aesthetics, just keep the cost down and make it look pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Now this fire, look, it's burning at a hot temperature, but there's a lot of black in there.
Yeah. When plastic burns, it does tend to go very smoky, doesn't it? And it's got a vile smell to it. Whenever I've burnt plastic anyway, it's got a foul smell to it. It makes a lot of nasty, noxious fumes.
They must have smelt that for miles on the day. They must have smelt that for miles around.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Yeah. I'll knock them off, make sure I've been through them all there. Yeah, I've been through this one. Sorry, I didn't know which order to put them in and how to explain this in an order that people would be able to comprehend what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, you've made that very clear where you're coming from there, and you've got some very valid, interesting points. Yeah, there's certainly that's left us with food for thought there, Paul. I have to say, it's definitely.
But I mean, this blowtorch burning at 3,000 degrees centigrade.
That's 3,000 centigrade.
Yeah,
that's even higher in Fahrenheit.
Yeah. All the carbon fires and that burning about 1,700 to 1,900. So we're looking at 1,000 more degrees needed on top of it.
So it's 3,000 degrees burning for 3 whole minutes. That will raise the temperature up dramatically.
Yeah, but even then it hadn't started flame. Look, it hasn't gone up in complete flames, and that's 3 minutes. Yeah, so what actually on those panels was the catalyst to start them going in the first place? Yes, once it gets going and the updraft, because the panels are there, which of course the updraft will stoke it. Yes, fair enough. You can understand the high temperatures there on it.
I think, Paul, to be honest, it's let's put it into perspective. It wasn't caused or started by heat being applied to the surface, but rather an actual naked flame of some sort. But even then, that's a naked flame coming out of the end of that's a naked flame coming out at the end of the blowtorch, and that doesn't get going.
For a full 3 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not heat, it's not a naked flame that's doing it, it's something.
There's something that don't smell right to me. It's tickling my nostrils.
Could it be that they put some paint or some other chemical solution actually onto the cladding? Because that could go up at a different temperature again, or cause the
possibly, but then we might be talking real advanced pre-planning on this.
Yeah, I've heard about
it's going to burn to make it burn more easily. I can't see the point of that. If you're putting something up for fire retardant, then why would you put a coating on something that's going to be non-retardant?
Unless you want it to deliberately burn, obviously.
Exactly.
Da, da, da.
Yeah, I mean, it sickens me if I'm right here, but my stomach's telling me and my nostrils tickle me so much on this one.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all know that there are things that you can apply to surfaces to make them more combustible, like thermite. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah.
There's also other stuff that burns and ignites with a hell of a heat, like magnesium and other different types of things, or combinations thereof. And so we could be looking at maybe something applied to the surface, or maybe some sort of incendiary device, or something else that could have got it going. I mean, that's just a possibility. We're not saying, of course, or making any accusations here on this show, but we are examining the possibilities, because anything's possible. And as the famous Sherlock Holmes once said, once you've eliminated, is it something like, once you've eliminated all the possible outcomes, once you've eliminated the possible outcomes, whatever's left, however improbable, must be the truth.
Yeah.
So you have to first eliminate all possible outcomes before.
And I think I've done a fair share here on eliminating, and before I put it out there for the people to make up their own minds on.
Yeah, certainly have there. Well, you've examined it in a much more technical way than these mainstream media outlets, which seem to pad out their articles a lot and don't give any real substance.
Yeah. But another point is the fact that with the testing for the standards and the regulations for these materials, when they're testing them, they test small samples. They're not bringing in the multiplying effect here at all, it seems. Or if they have got a multiplying effect, it's the model they're using is totally inaccurate.
Right. Well, we all know that statistics can be made to manipulate the truth, if you're carrying out some sort of test on something, you could say, you know, you could turn around and say, well,
there's statistics, and then there's statisticians, isn't there?
yeah. And you can make statistics more or less say whatever you like. You could say 100% of people's cats preferred Whiskers super meat, for example. And of course, 100% could mean one cat. They could give one cat a dish full of Whiskers super meat and he might eat it. And they might say 100% of cats preferred to eat Whiskers super meat, even though it's only one cat.
Yeah.
If you see what I'm saying. So they could do the same thing on a very, very small sample of this cladding or whatever it is, and get one to ignite and call that their test sample, if you like, whereas it might have a different effect on other samples.
Yeah, but this test sample here shows it with a blowtorch.
Indeed.
And it was more than 3 minutes. Yeah, all right, 3 minutes, 1 second. But the point is, before the timing start, the torch was already going on it. And when we actually finish, it still hasn't burst into flames. At 3 minutes, 1 second, it's still not burst into flames.
But remember, you have to, when you're being critically and analytical, you have to apply the same line of logic to looking at things one way as looking at things another way. So you could say that on that test subject, it was biased because there was only one test subject. Maybe if they'd used that blowtorch on several, they might have found that other specimens could have ignited a lot faster. So we have to look at this in an honest and open way.
Yes,
And you see where I'm coming from, Paul?
But even so, 3 minutes at 3,000 degrees centigrade.
Certainly smells a bit fishy. As the old saying goes, something rotten in state.
Yeah, well, when all of the courses of a building, carbon fires and that, it would not reach that temperatures to ignite it in the first place. As I said, once it started, once it's ignited and flamed, fair enough. Yes, it can stoke up and stoke up and stoke up, but it's the catalyst that made that initial ignition.
Yeah. And I'll also point out to our viewers, of course, that in the past, things like soft furnishings were a problem and they caused lots of rapid fires to develop inside buildings and things like that. But nowadays, on most furniture and soft furnishings, you usually get a little ticket saying flame retardant, which means that it's been sprayed with some sort of chemical to make it less likely to combust, or is made with different materials or whatever to make it more safe for you to use. And you find that in things like sofas, your settees, and you find it in mattresses, in beds nowadays, and all sorts, curtains, things like that. They virtually always make things flame retardant nowadays. Of course, if you've got some old furnishings, soft furnishings that are very, very old, they could still pose a danger in your house. But, you know, a combination of all these things can make the difference between whether these buildings go up in flames quickly or whether they, you know, dissipate and just fizzle out, as it were. Because fires can fizzle out when it reaches something that's flame retardant, and that would stop it from spreading. And of course, in these big buildings, it's also important to point out that in these big apartment blocks, that they have fire doors, which are very heavy and automatically close unless they're being, you know, propped open by something, by a door wedge or something like that. So, and these things are filled with flame retardant materials to stop fires spreading from one room or one flat to another flat, and so on and so forth. So presumably in the communal areas, like in the communal hallways, they would have all flame retardant carpets and things like that. If they use carpets, I mean, most of them I would presume have just got tiled floors or something like that. But you would think that it would be very difficult for these sort of things to spread from one room to another. But then again, you don't know what somebody might put on their ceiling. For example, when they're decorating their apartment, they could put some of these old-fashioned
tiles,
you know, polystyrene, what is it, styrofoam tiles and things like that. These were a complete fire hazard, these styrofoam tiles that they used to put on the ceilings and things. But nowadays, you don't see that very often in apartments and buildings. So, I mean, after the styrofoam tiles of the past that I remember, people started artexing their ceilings rather than putting the tiles up. But you never know what people still do these days in their apartments, and all these things can have a different effect on whether fires would spread or not. So
yeah, I think that's my screen share. Do I just click on this screen share to switch it off, do I?
yeah, I believe so. And then close screen share or whatever comes up, just have a look at the options.
Actually, I think I've done it.
Yeah, I think it's good enough, mate. It's good enough.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, I'm not
interesting food for thought there for our viewers on the technical aspects of what could start these fires and get things hot enough to combust. I mean, what is amazing, in fact, is that have you ever heard of a thing called human spontaneous combustion?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is incredible. I don't know if probably some of our viewers may or may not have heard of that, but it's actually where a human being can spontaneously combust and for no apparent reason, which is very strange, because the human body is made up of something like 70 or 80, about 70 or 80% water. And of course, if you're going to cremate a body, you have to get it very, very hot for a long period of time so that the water within the body evaporates first before it will ignite. And it takes a long time to get a body to that state, if you like, to combust.
Yeah, on some of these human combustion, spontaneous human combustion photographs, you see all the torso burnt away and the legs and arms are left there not burnt.
Yes, I've seen pictures like that, Paul. Is quite incredible, and in fact the stuff around them looks blackened and charred, like the walls, if they're sat on a chair by a wall or something, you know, it's all blackened and everything, and yet you see, like, you know, a couple of hands and a couple of feet still left over that hasn't burnt and things like that. So it's strange how some things can combust, and there's still a lot of things we don't fully understand about why some things combust the way they do, which in normal circumstances would never normally happen. So that's just another little point I thought I'd put in. But,
have we any input from Stav if we can?
Right, I wonder if you can hear me now.
we can hear you, Stav. Have you overcome your technical issues there? It certainly seems like it, Stav.
I'm not 100% sure, but what I'd done was, good evening, Paul, by the way, and everybody. I did have an article, but it's still not allowing me to load the page up properly. So I'd done is I copied the little bit of an article into WordPad. That was from the Metro newspaper about around the chap. Well, it's alleged that, you know, the fire in Grenfell Towers started from his apartment because of explosion or a fridge catching light or freezer or whatever. So I can read that out as long as you can understand what I'm saying. Yeah, for this few articles or not.
Go for it, Stav. Go for it while it's working good.
Yeah, you're nice and clear, so yeah, go for it, Stav.
Okay, well, this is from the Metro paper. I think it was a day after or after. I didn't put it down in the word. It was a day or two, but apparently this was taken. It was on TV interview as well, so it's all been vouched for. Well, it says here, the man whose flat caught fire first in Grenfell Tower packed a bag of clothes before raising the alarm, it was claimed. His pregnant neighbour, Marianne Adam, on her door to warn her about the 12:50 a.m. At that point, he had already prepared to leave the building by packing possessions, she claimed. Called at 12:54 and arrived within 6 minutes. 41 described how she could see the fire in the man's kitchen through his open door. It still appeared small at the time. This down a bit, you have to bear with me. The ring's a bit slow tonight. She was frightened enough to leave without any of her possessions, not even talking. They were out of the building shortly afterwards, but for the next half hour, at least, she said she saw very little people coming out of the building with the fire spreading upwards. To claim at least 17 lives. Now, bearing in mind this was the other day, and it's obviously leapt up quite a bit instead, with the toll expected to rise when the firefighters reach the top floors. The fire started in the flat next door to mine on the 4th floor, Marianne said. It was exactly 12:50 a.m. because I was, and it woke me up, she said. I saw outside luggage. There was a big bag with his clothes, she said. Took the stuff from his flat and then told the neighbours. Lamrani, another, also described being woken up by a man. I'm on the floor and said, "That's it." He said it was his fridge that had exploded. She said. Started filming it on his phone. He was upset, but I don't think he had a clue of the scale of what was happening. The Free Fire could get to the tower block because of the difficulties with access, Mariam claimed. Asked how she felt when she was woken up by her neighbour and told the fire, she said it was very, very scary. There was only one gate to the building and it's too small. Fires get in the building, they were trying to put out the fire through the window way. The entrance is too small. Even with a car, you have to wait for one car to pass before you can go. Statement today, the fire service said it was too early for this conclusively what caused the fire, and they comment on reports it started with a broken fridge. So yeah, that's the article from the Metro. So make of that what you like.
Well, the pungency is even more of a stench tickling my nostrils now.
Right. I thought it might, Paul.
Who packs stuff when there's a fire?
Well, most people with a sort of sane understanding of reality would just get the hell out as soon as they see a fire and shut the door behind them and
exactamundo, Jeff.
That, or try and put the fire out some way, you know. But they certainly wouldn't spend time gathering their belongings necessarily. Maybe he tried to put the fire out and couldn't do it, and then decided to pack up his possessions. I don't know, but
if he spent time trying to put the fire out and realises he can't, he would have got out even quicker, not gone and packed a blinking suitcase. He's going on holiday.
Yeah. So presumably then, if it started on the 4th floor, then I would assume, because fire usually rises, doesn't it? It gets hot and it burns stuff above it and burns upwards rather than downwards. Yeah, you would presume that the people on the first few floors and the ground floor would have possibly made it out okay and alive. That's what I would.
Well, the thing that I mean, I've not. You guys probably done a bit more research and listened to a lot of people's theories on this over the last few days. I mean, I could be wrong, but I've never heard this story.
I haven't heard much at all about any of it, to be honest, Stav.
Well, I haven't been watching any
apart
from one program. I saw a little bit and I thought, well, that's not right. And then I started looking into it for myself.
Yeah, but has anybody else said about this packing his clothes outside before he raised the alarm to his neighbour.
I've heard nothing about that. Though you took me by surprise on that one.
Has any of the boys picked up on it? Any of the alternative news boys picked up on it?
Not that I've heard.
I find that most strange, don't you?
Yeah.
Does certainly smell a bit fishy, because you'd think that if anybody's going to have their bags ready and packed, maybe they're the instigator of the fire, and maybe it was deliberate. Only a possibility. I mean, who knows?
Well, it definitely sounds pre-planned to me. If he's got a suitcase packed.
Well, a holdall, I think he said. I think it was a holdall, but even then, certainly begs the question, doesn't it, whether it was premeditated, or you know, who knows? It's just an idea. I mean,
if you're fighting a fire and you can't get it under control, you then get away from it as quick as you can. You don't go around packing stuff.
Well, I mean,
I've experienced not a fire like that, but many years ago, we live in a third floor. One of our neighbours decided to put some chips on a pan and then go back to sleep, because they'd had one or two tottles, you know, tots of rum or whatever. I forgot about it. No, I was in bed, actually. I was recovering from surgery when I come out of hospital. But anyway, I think another, before we knew where we were, we could smell smoke. Within a couple of minutes, our whole flat filled thick full of smoke, and we could hardly breathe. I had enough time to grab my dressing gown and get out. About packing bloody bags.
I know that just sounds pre-planned to me. No.
What you've actually said to me, what you've actually said then, Stav, reminds me of something that's happened to a very dear friend of mine, who sadly went out, had a few to drink, and came back home, stuck his chip pan on, and it ignited apparently, and the following day they found his charred remains and the house on fire. Very, very sad set of circumstances, and of course, I think at this point it's important to point out to people that if you are going to have a chip pan, or if a chip pan ignites, or something with fat, is not to throw water on it to put it out, because if you throw water on it, the water will go underneath the fat and it will cause the fat to spit out. Like, you know, for example, when you put a sausage in a frying pan, the water in the sausage makes it spit, the same as a piece of bacon or a sausage or whatever. So anything with water in it, water and oil do not mix. Remember that when you're dealing with fires. The best way to extinguish any fire like that involving oil or fat or whatever is to starve it of oxygen, because when you starve it,
smother it with a blanket as much.
Sometimes just putting a lid. Sometimes just putting a lid on your deep fat fryer will be enough to cause it to burn out, to fizzle out.
That's right.
I mean, I've had hot pans, and I've I've left them on mistakenly for quite a long time, and I've gone back out, and it's been absolutely fine because I've left the lid on. If I hadn't left the lid on, there would have definitely been a fire, because the state of the inside of the pan and everything, well, is absolutely disgusting to say the least, and it was beyond cleaning out, let's put it like that. But it did save it from igniting. So starve it of oxygen. Put a wet, well, I wouldn't say, if you're going to put a towel over the top of it or something, then yeah, by all means wet it under the tap, but wring it out properly. Yeah, last drop out.
Jeff, a lot of people don't even know these basics about, you know, if you put something on the pan and it ignites, it's fat and it catches light, the flame catches the fat and it's going up. A lot of people just panic, and they will chuck water on it, which is the worst thing to do. But they don't know the basics of just smothering the fire. To, you know, be calm, just smother it, chuck it. It's quite an easy thing to do, but a lot of people don't know these things. And the other thing about this whole show, this whole after reports and everything, is they touched on sprinklers, they touched on fire alarms. A building like that, I can remember working on buildings similar around London, and when they built them types of buildings, a bit later than that, but around about that, bit much later than that, every landing had a fire extinguisher on it.
In the communal hallways and landings and things.
Now there was no alarms.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, when I've been in buildings like that,
in the stairwells.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Well, in all the high-rise apartments I've been in, and I've been in quite a few in my time, Stav, and I have to say I've always seen sprinkler systems there in the communal areas like hallways and stairwells and things like that. So you know,
it seems to me like it was the. There's no idea about it. A lot of people lost their lives, and it's tragic, and it's gut-wrenching for everybody. But at the end of the day, they couldn't have picked another block of flats in London that they could, you know, that wasn't protected, didn't have anything that. Where's the health and safety in all this? Why wasn't the health and safety raised about this? No, I read here. If if they make sure that you've got up-to-date fire alarms in your own apartment, let alone the hallways and all the rest of this.
I mean, health and safety is so stringent nowadays that it's become like political correctness, that you can't actually get anything done because there's so many rules and regulations regarding health and safety that you'd think there would have been some, because like nowadays you'd think you can barely put a pencil behind your ear in case of fear of getting a blooming splinter or something like that. You know, health and safety is that.
It's another thing, Jack. Yeah, it's another thing. While I got my connection, I'm not ranting on. If I was given a flat to live in there, not given, if I was going to rent a flat in there, first of all, if they showed me around that place with no fire alarms, no fire extinguishers, and all the rest of it, I wouldn't even rent a place there. If I'd have known later on, like that guy put in the blog for the whole of that whole area, if I'd have found, I would have got my arse out there as soon as possible and moved somewhere else, because place like that, hang on a minute, where would people stay there?
Yeah.
Surely.
Question. You think that there'd be like those break glass here in the event of a fire, one of those things, and you think there'd be maybe some fireman's axes, or you know, like you said, some fire extinguishers and sprinklers, smoke detectors,
blankets. Yeah, we had all that stuff in the 70s and 80s when we used to travel up to London, and they built these new, you know, not as big as that, half the size that, and whatever you call them, condominiums and whatever, especially in the outskirts of London, where the whole of the built up for people to commute into London.
Right.
Around Surrey and that way. These places had fire blankets, alarms, extinguishers, axes. You break the glass, and then you know you can break the main alarm glass, and it would the whole building would be you couldn't cover your ears to get rid of it. You know, the noise was so loud. All of these things were in place.
You're probably talking well over 120, 130 decibels with one of these alarms going throughout the main building if somebody'd broken the glass and started one of these alarms, or you know, even smoke detectors in your individual room. I mean, I live in a council property, and we've got to have. They won't let us. They won't let us not have a smoke detector. We're forced to have a smoke detector. So you know, and those things generate 120 decibels or so of volume. Of sound, not volume, sorry, of 120 decibels of sound, which is pretty loud to say the least. You know, so you'd think the cumulative effect as these rooms are burning, if they had smoke detectors, they would all be going off at the same time, making an even a bigger din.
it just seems a classic with what with the panels and all that. If we can take it all for what it is, you know, a kitchen fire causes the whole place to go up like a Roman candle. There's no alarms. There's no fire extinguisher. The guy's got his stuff packed, and he stands outside with this woman after they get out, and no one else is coming out.
Yeah,
Just the whole lot seems completely like Earth.
in this
What on earth?
in this day and age, things like that shouldn't really happen. I mean, yeah, accidents do happen, and you know, some people might call it an act of God, where you get some sort of natural events happen and things like that. But you think that we'd have these sort of things covered by now. I mean, even aeroplanes with their most modern sort of technology and things crash. So what you have then is an inquest. They get the black box out and they find out exactly what happened, so that they can prevent these things from happening again by changing the technology somehow, or modifying something, or or disposing of dodgy or faulty devices and so on and so forth. So there needs to be some sort of system in place, I think, to put in these.
Jeff, this is Kensington. This is Kensington.
Yeah, this is one of the posh parts of London, I believe. Yeah.
I just find the whole, it's like, well, of course it's believable it's happened, but it's like, what, you know? I just the whole thing seems, I don't know,
It does.
strange, apart from the tragic loss. Which
Smells a bit dodgy to me, Stav, I've got to say, in this day and age, for things like that to happen. But there you go. What are your thoughts on it, Paul? Is Paul still with us? Oh, it looks like Paul's gone. So yeah, there's definitely questions that need to be answered there, I think, and whether the mainstream are touching on it or not, well, I don't know, but sounds like they're not doing a good job of investigating it.
It's just very, you know, but not bizarre, because, you know, people have been killed. You can't treat it so lightly, but it's just, I don't know what to make of the whole thing. There's you know, a lot of angry people, and rightly so. It's all turned political now.
Well, I think
it's all being used politically, like a great big football, to overturn governments. Can you believe? Can you believe they're using this to overturn a government, whether you like it or not? That, you know, people believe in the democratic process or they don't, whether it's fixed or whatever their own feelings on about it is being used as this football now. And I find the whole thing is really, and it's not very respectable for those people that have lost their lives, I don't think.
I mean, if they are blaming the cladding on this, you know, it sounds to me like they're blaming the cladding on this, or you know, being partially responsible for this, then at the very least, you think that they would say, well, let's take all this cladding, or this particular type of cladding, off of all the buildings that have already got it, because if there is a risk, we need to eliminate that risk. If the cladding is responsible for it, then the very least we should be able to do is to remove it off of all buildings, get it all recalled. Like, you know, if you get a dodgy car with a dodgy brake and it's happening again and again and again on certain models, then the manufacturer will call it back and have a recall on all that model of car, for example. So what we need to do is to get all this cladding off of these buildings and not put them at risk, unnecessary or undue risk. That's the very first thing I think they should do if they're suspecting that.
Well, they've got a problem, haven't they? They got a problem. Nobody knows. I don't know. Perhaps people do. I don't know. It's impossible to tell how many people were in that block.
Right.
One thing. will be something else, and the real figures I don't think's ever going to come out of it. I think personally.
Oh, people have.
I don't know. I never haven't been there. I never went to the tower block. I don't know, especially recently. I don't know nothing about the. I know a little bit about the area because I worked in there in the late 70s anyway, but not actually in, but around that area. But anyway, you know.
Well, like
I just
stuff. I mean, people have overnight guests and things like that. So, you know, one day there might be the normal amount of householders and people inside the building, and another day there could be more people in, like on a weekend or something, if they're having overnight guests or whatever in their apartments. So it's not going to be easy to determine, you know, after such a level of damage. You know, go sifting through the remains, and it sounds pretty morbid, I know, but somebody has to sift through the remains of this and find teeth to get dental records and all sorts of things to try and determine, you know, who's where at what time and what have you. And
what if people that were in there that night, whether they were there full time or not, are not recorded.
Right.
British citizens, they may be illegal immigrants. Nobody's going to know about them. You ain't going to have no dental records, are you?
Well, there's something you could do for a start to improve safety in these places. You could have in the foyer.
I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking, right?
You've got the foyer. Stav, if you've got the foyer in the building, you could have a closed circuit TV camera put in, so you could determine who's been in and who's been out of the building. If there's only one entrance, then or if there's two entrances, if you've got both entrances covered with CCTV, you can determine exactly who's been in, who's stayed in, who's left, and all the rest of it. If you look through the footage, if you've got some sort of black box, but of course the black box or whatever it is that you use to record would have to be fire retardant. so that you could recover the recordings. Do you see what I'm saying, Stav?
Well, you could, but then, you know, who's to say they've got all this? They've got. I to be honest, I think it's overdone. I think the whole CCTV business in the UK is overdone. I think a lot of it is spoken about, that the factual cameras that people say that are in everybody's toilets and behind the man, and they're looking at us and monitors. I think it's overdone, because I know around this area here,
yeah,
right, there's a lot of things going on middle of the night that if they wanted to catch people that do it up to mischief, they could catch them easy. But I know, in fact, there's no cameras around here.
Right. Yeah,
I think it's over-egged a bit.
Yeah,
there isn't CCTV, of course there's, but only in selective areas and places.
Yeah,
the whole event speaks to me, Jeff.
Yeah,
that it's overcrowding. The City of London cannot cope with the amount of immigrants that have come in. That's the basic facts here. In these places, they're putting them in these places they shouldn't be in because our health and safety doesn't exist. And nobody should have been in that block. No one. Absolutely no one.
I mean, I know I've got a council flat myself, so I know that in tenancy agreements, you've usually got a maximum occupancy for whatever size building you've got. If it's a council property, for example, if you've got a flat, I think you can have a maximum of 3 people in the flat or something like that. If they're staying there long term. Obviously these people have to be declared for rent purposes and things, but in a building like with 3 bedrooms, you might have a limit of 5 or 6 people or whatever, but there's usually some sort of tenant limit. I know that in deprived areas, people tend to break those limits, especially in with immigrant type situation. People do tend to go over the top and have or have rather large families, and they can quite often.
I think they can cope, yeah. I just don't. Well, now the figures are it's touching 9 million people in London.
9 million. And and that's out of a population, as far as I'm aware, in the UK, which is the technical figure is about 64.5 million. So that's about about 1/6 or 1/7 almost of the population. Well, if you say that it's probably 70 million, including all the illegals or people that are not meant to be here, then you would say that that's probably about 1/7 of the population almost just in London.
Yes, and I think nobody should have been in that tower block, because it should have been pulled down years ago, and there should have been proper accommodation to take up the migration that we've got. That would be proper planning. That would have been proper thing to do. But as we know, I think they're bursting. I think they're bursting. That's just my take on it. Now, a lot of people might say, "Oh well, do you go around there? Do you count them?" And I go, "No," but it's just pure figures, really. When you look at it,
it may sound like pure figures, Stav, but it also makes an awful lot of sense. If we've got homelessness on the rise throughout the UK, and people sleep in rough and tents, and it's mostly in all the big cities that's going on, then it leaves the question: we've either got a lot of buildings that are completely unoccupied, owned by some very, very rich people that have just used them for investment.
Well, dear Jeff, right? This isn't happening around here. There's the blocks that I'm in, a couple of the blocks, next block next to me. There's young and a husband, right? And they've got a family of 5 and 6 in 2-bedroom flats.
Yeah, that's over occupation, definitely. That is
well, that's happening here. I'm a long way from London, well, 50 or 60 miles. But the fact is, this isn't really what you would call. It's not a city. It's urbanized, but it's not. It's not a city or even the outskirts of a city. It's these people around here. They're living on top of each other around here. So God knows what it's like in London. Like I say, there is no excuse for the loss of those people in that tower block. Absolutely, doesn't matter who's in control, whatever. There is no excuse for it.
Well,
tragic, a tragedy that was waiting to happen.
Yeah, definitely, it's an absolute tragedy, and my heartfelt condolences go out to all those people and their families of relatives that have survived that sort of catastrophe. But
it's a warning, Jeff. It's a warning. It's a warning that the political, whatever they are, I daren't say, full. The cities are full. They can't take any more.
Their infrastructure's chock-a-block. The traffic is gridlock all the time. The speeds are down to, in rush hour, down to sort of 9, 10, 11 miles an hour, depending on the city you're in. And I think we're stretched to bursting point, to be honest, Stav. To be quite honest,
and the missus just said, I was saying about, well, I wouldn't have stayed there. Why did people stay there with the warnings? She said, quite rightly so, well, they never had a choice.
Right. Well, this is it. If you've got a shortage of housing, then people have got to live somewhere, so they'll put up with whatever's on offer rather than being on the street. I mean, at the end of the day, if your choice is to live in a hovel in a high-rise apartment or live on the streets in the freezing cold,
well, I think that's what I think they'll have to bite the bullet. They'll have to bite the bullet. You can't have more and more and more. It's just basic figures as far as I can. We can look all through the conspiracies and political, all the rest of that, right? But at the end of the day, it's just an infrastructure, housing, economy, and all of these things. If you believe in economies and banks, yeah, even if you take all that into consideration, you've got people, you've got a certain amount of money, because the system is rigged, whichever way you look at it. A certain amount of accommodation, and that is it. You can't magic space out of space, unfortunately. maybe some physician might, physics, science, bothered arguing with that, but I'm talking here now, what's practically here, and you just can't do it. It's, you know, an actual fact, pull into these areas, and I looked at a map earlier on,
right,
and you talk about what's happening in London. It's got maps of different ethnic people, right? Let's just be honest about it. Ethnic people, and they're all in their own segregated parts.
Right.
Whatsoever. London is the big dividing city in the world.
So
as regards
cultural integration is basically one illusion, a big fallacy, because they're not integrating. They're going in their own little areas and staying with their own people in their own little areas.
So these political bigwigs, right, who get paid by corporations, who cross their hands with silver, and they want nice posh areas, and they don't want to integrate with other ethnicities, etc., will say, well, you make sure that the money's spent on our area because we're the ones who pays the piper, you know?
Yeah.
So we're the ones that, and we want the money, our money spent there. So some other segregated other part of London is not going to get any.
I think
it's not going to get any. So therefore, you've got all of this stuff is not addressed, right? Apart from, oh, we're going to make the rich pay for the poor. That ain't going to work.
Well, I think a lot of the problems stem from back in the 80s. After we had the winter of discontent in 1979, we had the Thatcher administration come in, and of course they encouraged people to buy their own homes, and they brought in the selling off of the local council homes, council houses, to encourage people to buy their own home rather than rent. And of course, we've sold off a lot of that local housing, which was previously available to people on low incomes, and of course we haven't got that now. It's all, or rather a lot of it has been sold off. We've still got some, obviously, and but it's very, very limited, the amount of council housing we've got. So I mean, yeah, we've had housing associations take up some of the slack, so to speak, and
but Jeff, it's a lot worse than people think.
Sorry?
It is a lot worse than people think.
Oh, definitely.
Because people think, you know, people think, oh, well, I'm doing all right. But the families opposite me, like I say, 6 in a 2-bedroom flat.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot worse than people think. And I think it's a cruelty to bring immigrants into this country, to put them in a block of flats like that, where there's no health and safety. I think that's cruelty. Asking to bring immigrants in to better their lives into places like that.
Yeah. Well, have you heard of a thing called cabin fever, Stav? Have you heard of cabin fever? It's a condition, it's a psychological condition where people can go a bit, you know, they can go a bit loopy as well. It's so mental health is affected from being like, if they're sardine packed in with a lot of people in a very confined space, it has dramatic effects on people's
psychological effect. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's you know, that's going to cause, I mean, as anybody knows, if you're, you know, sardine packed in with a lot of people, it adds a lot of social pressure, a lot of psychological pressure, and it can cause people to snap and lose it. And, you know, this brings about lots of frustrations and tensions and disruptions and fights and conflicts and all sorts. So, you know, there definitely needs to be something done about the social housing in England. I think we need to, the councils need to take more responsibility. I mean,
well, I think first and foremost they ought to look at the demographic, the whole thing. Start bringing more people to integrate. If that's what they think's going to happen, whatever, that's a different conversation. But if they want to bring more people in from other countries, then they better make sure that they can actually have somewhere decent for them to live. You know,
it's just common sense now.
It's cruelty.
I mean, it's just common sense. If you've got a small country like the United Kingdom, that you've got a limited or finite carrying capacity of that country, and that the country can only absorb X amount of people into it to be able to live for the, you know, and for the economy to actually function. You've got to remember also what you were saying about money earlier on, Stav, that if you increase the population of a country or a nation or whatever, then you actually reduce the liquidity in the money supply. So you also have to increase the amount of money in circulation to match the population growth. So if you suddenly brought 5 million people into the UK and increased the population by 1/14 or something like that, then you would have to increase the money supply by 1/14 to match the amount of population increase or something along those lines. So all these things have an effect, like you say, the money supply, the infrastructure, housing, the roads, public services like swimming pools, libraries, everything becomes stretched to the point of breaking if you've got too many people. It's simple mathematics, you know. If you've got a finite society with infinite people, is not going to work. Common sense should tell anybody that.
No, that's right. You can't put a pint in a quart glass, can you? You can't put a pint of water into a pint glass. You just can't do it. It just can't be done. And I think the problem is with all of this now, they've made it such a political war against the reds against the blues, or the oranges against the yellows, or, you know, like, oh, we need a colour revolution, perhaps we can get somebody to help us out, you know, and all this bullshit. I just think you just got to look logistically. We got plenty. The rich have got so much more that they can share it, and we can all live ever happily after. No, there wouldn't be enough anyway. Even if you made it out of thin air, that at the end of the day, there's got to be a take up of that money that's made out of thin air. You can't just throw it.
That's a complete fairy tale. Because if you have all these rich people, it doesn't mean to say they're necessarily going to share it with, you know, the lower class or whatever. People tend to hoard stuff, so they're not going to be able to, you know, that would never work, you know.
Oh, and I know, right? A few bob, right? And you want to go and live in a nice warm country where, you know, it's pretty nice, it's pretty free. And if you've got money, these countries, you can have security. If you've got problems with robbers, whatever, you can go to Acapulco, you can go to Mexico in a failed state and live a life like a king. Why would you want to stay here? And if people have got, you know, these people that supposedly make the world go round, who buy the politicians, all of a sudden go, well, I tell you what, I've had enough yourselves. I mean, and they withdraw there. What's going to happen then? Where are they going to get it from? You just can't print money,
right,
without actually peel a piece of paper and say, go over there and get your shopping for the week with it. Just write it on a piece of paper, and it's got to, the man who's going to come and deliver that, right, say, what is that all I've got to do? Yeah. Well, I ain't going to work then, because I'm going to write my own bits of paper, and I don't even need to go to work anymore. It's nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, in a normal society, the able-bodied have to, you know, make some sort of societal contribution, whether it be producing something or providing services or whatever, for it all to function. If everybody decided we're not going to work, you know, we're just going to get our free benefit, then eventually all the resources would run out. It's as simple as that.
There's one thing, Jeff. There is one thing. A lot of people, you know, it's love. Love is all we need. Yeah, and we can just love each other. We don't need money. We can all feed each other, and but they're forgetting one thing.
Right.
About a human being. Is a human being can become lazy. lazy.
Well, a human being requires certain basic attributes to live. First of all, they need air to breathe. They need water or clean drinking fluid of one form or another to provide them with their liquid nutrition. Then they need food. They need shelter. So they've got all sorts. Love can't provide that, I'm afraid. In the real world, you need protein, vitamins, you need heating to keep you warm in the winter. You need a roof over your head to keep you sheltered from the elements, and so on and so forth. And all these things have to come from somewhere. They don't just magic themselves into existence. They have to be produced. So, you know, it's only common sense.
You've got to have an input. You can't just have an output. You can't just have one big output. You know, you've got to put in to get out. In other words, you can't just sit there and have just an input and say, well, I'm not going to put any output, because like that does it. You know that. I don't know what happens after we die. Who cares? But at the end of the day, we'll all have to do that. Our assumptions on whatever happens. But at the end of the day, when you're in your mortal coil and you're here, there's the basics of things that you've got to do to feed yourself. And like I said before, I was brought up in the days that there was no benefits.
Right.
For the nine
My
of us.
computer died and I've just reincarnated, guys.
Welcome back.
My computer died and I've just reincarnated.
Welcome back. Welcome. What I'm saying, Jeff, is
the prodigal son.
There's got to be some common sense here, and numbers, and just really, this is going to get really.
Well, I seen some
politicians grabbing over it.
You're breaking up a bit there, Stav. I did see some statistics about Muslim immigrants. I don't know how accurate the statistics were, but it said somewhere in the region of about 60% of male Muslims were receiving some form of benefit or another, and at least 70% of female Muslims were receiving some sort of, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was in the 70s, are receiving some form of benefits or another. So, you know, because I think that's probably a lot to do with their religions, because the males don't like the females going out to work and being in public without their partners and things like that, or whatever. So I don't know, you know, whether those sort of figures are very accurate, but it's certainly a high percentage. So that doesn't help the infrastructure, does it?
But there's a big, isn't there one big thing?
I don't know what ground you cover, guys, since they cut me off, but let me tell you this, which is rather strange. I went to PJ's chat box where you put the link stuff, and they'd scrubbed it. So I've had to ask PJ to repost it again. They'd
deleted it?
Yeah, they'd actually scrubbed the link you put in for us to start off, yeah, from his chat box, so I couldn't get back in.
Oh,
that's a bit suspect, isn't it?
It's more than suspect.
So
I was surprised they hadn't cut me off long before they did, to be quite honest. You know, when they cut me off, I thought, that's starting. And then when I went to PJ's, after I rebooted and everything, went to PJ's chat box, and they'd scrubbed the link. So that tells me they are fiddling with me.
Probably me too as well, Paul, because I put one up on Facebook. Put it, you know, I mean, it's up to them if they want to ban me from posting. I couldn't give a monkeys, and they will go ahead, punk. You know, I don't care. But they may. I would think they've been censoring a lot of the stuff that I put up on there lately, but I don't put a lot there like I used to. So that might explain why that link was scrubbed.
Yeah, but I don't, why would they scrub it out of his chat box?
Because I put it up. I posted it.
Let's put it like this. I've still got about 16 or 17 days left of a month's post ban on Facebook, and I can't click like, I can't answer anything in a chat PM box or anything whatsoever. I can't do anything at all.
And people don't think we live in a control system. They ought to wake up.
Yeah, definitely. Wake up. Everything's a control system. Religion is used to divide us. We've got government that divides and conquers as well. And
they use the race card to divide us.
They take away our freedoms for any excuse whatsoever, like, you know, any so-called acts of terrorism, which are not...
Well, yeah, as you say before, it's the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem so people cry out for a solution. They give the solution which they wanted in the first place.
Problem, reaction, solution. Exactly, Paul. 100%, mate. This is the sort of antics that they get up to. I think most of us are, well, in our sort of community circles are become quite aware of that nowadays. So
yeah, but this is where the people that are not in our circles and maybe listening first time, I'm not being nasty to you, but you got to wake up and smell the coffee, guys. You really have.
Do some investigation into Hegelian dialectic. It's called Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. It's the modus operandi of the people that are controlling us.
Yeah.
To bring about what they want for their purposes.
Yeah. And it's just like our thought tonight. I smell a rat with this fire. Now, is it Hegelian dialectic there again? Burn the building down so they can sell it off and build all plush buildings, and then they've got on with the gentrification. That means getting the poor people out of London.
Could well be, Paul. Could well be. It's certainly questions that need to be asked, and
definitely that's what's going through my mind.
But definitely,
it could be the other way round, though, Paul, couldn't it?
In what respect, Stav? I
said it could be the way round, didn't it? But I read something on, and Nikki read it. He has offered accommodation and new housing for these people, maybe up to 9 miles away from where the block tower, but they're up in arms about that. Of course, Corbyn and Co want them to take up residence in the rich boys' houses that have nobody in them.
The buildings should be built in the area where they was brought up in. They shouldn't be moved out of their area. They've done it with the country folk. They pushed the country folk out, and that they got the big buyers from London coming in and buying the houses out in the country. They've done it to us country folk.
Yeah, now but the thing is, Paul, maybe a lot of those were bought there.
Maybe a lot of those what? Yeah.
Look at both sides of the coin here, I think. You've got to look, we can all go one-sided.
Yeah, but I mean, it is still their community where they've got all their friends.
Yes, of course, but then, you know, if they don't have a nation there, it's like I was saying to Jeff earlier on, they won't look at the numbers. It's approaching 9 million people in London. 9 million.
Yeah.
Now, you can't keep pouring more and more people into London and to get some type of problem with housing these people. It's like I said, it's a water in a quart pint bloody mug. It ain't going to happen. You just can't do it. And that's not an excuse. It's not an excuse.
It's going to overflow, and they're going to end up on the street in tents and things.
Well, in a pint, sorry. The way round, but yeah.
Sense,
and you know, if they're going to bring in lots and lots of new people to big up the populations of these cities, especially inner cities, they better make damn sure that they can house these people. Like I was saying to Jeff, at the end of the day, it's cruelty. None of them people should have been living in that block.
Yeah.
Been in proper housing, with proper health and safety, with proper fire alarms, with fire extinguishers, with updated electrics.
Yeah, but it's weaponised
power, so them access for fire.
It's weaponised migration stuff. They're bringing them in purposefully to break up.
Well, I look at figures, some governments, some private charities, whatever, and they're all pretty much in queue with each other. So you've got to go with the figures, and there's a tremendous amount of strains on, especially the inner cities, on the not just the infrastructure, but the whole economic side of the city. I don't know how on earth London, apart from the inner mile, as we know, but that's a different matter. Apparently the money don't come from there to these other areas. How they can keep a population of 900 people going? There isn't no way of businesses there, are there? What, apart from the inner city of London, the inner mile, or whatever you want to call it, what else is there apart from retail work for the people?
But in that mile, they're not actually producing anything. They're shuffling papers and scamming the people of money in that mile. That's all they're doing. They're not producing anything of worth.
Well,
I mean, Nicky just told me, I said 900 people. I meant 9 million people.
right.
I know what you meant.
Well, you have to look at the basic, not just the basic carrying capacity of the country, but the level of resources that are needed, and where are they going to come from? For example, our food, like I've said on many times, that at least 50% of the food that we have in the UK is imported from abroad. So we're not supplying.
And there's no need to be, Jeff. I live in the country. The fields are fallow, they're empty, they're not producing.
Exactly. We should have more. We have
got enough field lands to produce for the whole of our country, yet they're not doing it.
We've got enough land to do it, and they're not doing it. Exactly. We're importing most of our food, just over 50%.
Straight away.
That's why. It's because it's set aside. Get more money for doing nothing than if they did. That's the EU policy, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we shouldn't be in it. Well, we're not in it. We never joined the EU. We joined the common market. We never joined the EU.
This is, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, the idea of Brexit, for example, is a very, very good idea. And, you know, if a country is going to be independent from the supranational EU, as it were, then we have to also start behaving in a manner that that we become self-sufficient and independent, because that's what
in a manner which is beneficial to a nation, which we are, which they're trying to make us not a nation. They don't want us to have sovereignty.
We want to have sovereignty. We have to be fully independent in every way. That means we need to provide enough energy for all the people in our nation, all the food we need, so that we don't have to import, or at least minimize the amount of food that we can import, that we have to import, by producing surpluses in other industries that we can trade with other countries to get the food. But ideally, we want to produce the maximum amount necessary for us to be independent before we start trading. That way we can end up with surpluses, make a profit, and actually
and it is possible, Jeff, but we keep getting told it's not possible. This is the mantra they keep feeding the people, and the people have got it in the minds that we can't be, but we can be.
Well, the only way you can strengthen an economy is through abundance. Without the abundance of the resources,
exactly,
the economy will weaken, because it's all supply and demand. If you cannot supply enough of the resources and there's a big demand, it's just going to force prices up. And then
we've been weakened on purpose. We've been weakened on purpose. There is no need for us to be this weak.
Exactly. This is what I feel. I feel that the EU has hollowed out our manufacturing base and industry and stuff like that. And it's made it untenable, unsustainable. And we need to get back to providing for ourselves the things that we need. If we can grow food all year round, put up some big buildings with UV lighting, so that food that we wouldn't normally be able to grow in this country, for example, that we could, with UV lighting and the right amount of heat and so on and so forth, with the correct irrigation and things. We should be doing all that to provide as near to 100% as possible, or even more, even a surplus. If we get a surplus going.
With today's technology, it can be easily achieved. Easily achieved.
I certainly think we could get near to that point, and you know, and if we could provide our own energy needs through sustainable sources like solar power and wind power and things that aren't harmful to the environment, you know, that's also.
The EU needs us more than we need them.
Yeah, because of the amount of, the amount of stuff that we put.
If there wasn't all this, yeah, but the thing is,
Sorry, guys.
Well, we just had technical issues there, folks. That's Paul with his mobile phone going off live on air. Sorry, Stab, what were you going to say, mate?
wasn't all of this placement of people, countries from around the world, there wouldn't be the problems we're seeing now. And if there is an agenda behind it, from Agenda 21 and all the rest of it that most of us have read and whatever, New World Order, homogenizing the whole human race to have one culture, one idealism, whatever. So it ain't going to work, Paul. It's all going to end in tears.
This is my theory, Stav. This is why politics does not work. Because what do politicians do? They make policy. Now, policy is what they determine as law. So statutes or whatever, they determine that to be law. And that's all very well, and it's all very idealistic, but there's one problem. People don't always follow laws. So a piece of paper cannot determine what a country needs, or those are technical problems. Those are technical problems. When you have X amount of people needing X amount of resource or Y amount of resources, these are technical problems. And so we need technical solutions, not political solutions. Political solutions never solved anything, in my opinion. That's the way I look at it. The people do. It's always down to the people. At the end of the day, the buck stops with us, not the politicians. You rely on politicians to get something, well, you'll never get anywhere. No, that's right. Well, you know, I've goes about it. I've said my piece about it, and you know, you go and I just say to people, go and have a look. Go and look at the maps. You can Google them and find them yourself, and you'll just see people in pockets of segregation. There is no modernism. I think you can have small pockets of segregation of different cultures, but you've got country that's in has got to maintain its base culture and its laws. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It won't work. Any idea of a multicultural society is not going to work unless it's got a base culture that keeps it all together and a set of rules. People want to bring their culture here and contribute because it's a lovely country, because they love the base culture of that country. If you destroy the base culture of that country, you're going to destroy everything. That it cannot survive. And
you just got a homogenised blodge, haven't you?
Well, in the old days, Stav, in the old days, we used to say nobody's above the law. The law, we are all equal before the law, and that was that. We had common law. We're all under common law by default, and that includes everybody. But nowadays, of course, what they do is they say, well, you're a Christian, you're white, so you exist under common law. He's a Muslim or Asian or whatever. They have Sharia.
Absolutely.
Now the two systems.
This morning I was walking my dogs.
Contrary to each other. The two systems of law are entirely contrary to each other. So there's going to be conflict, you know.
Which was
you mentioned that, Jeff and Paul. I walked dogs this morning. There's a guy who lives in the next block, and he was washing his car. And I come past him and went, "Oh, hello, boys!" And he come over and he had a stroke of the dogs, and he had a slight lilt to his tongue. And I said, "Where are you you from? He's from Iran.
Iran?
I said, oh, he said, no, he didn't say Iran. He said, I'm from Persia. I said, well, you mean Iran? He goes, yeah, that's right.
Right.
Anyway, he teaches English in the local town up the road. Right, he teaches English.
Right.
All of their parents drops them off. You know, Middle Eastern, Persian people, whatever. All of the parents that drop them off can't speak one word of English.
Right. Yes.
Children, English, right? And he's a Persian Christian. He's a Christian, right? He's not a Muslim.
Yeah.
But he's Iranian, right? But he was trying to explain to me. He said the absurdity of this. It's ridiculous.
How can you expect a country to run properly and viably when you got confounded tongues?
I mean, you'd have to have thousands of interpreters all the time being able to, you know.
It's English, but their parents can't speak it. I mean, what does that tell you? What I mean, and I said, well, all of them? He said, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, they're driving up and down and they've got, you know, they're different. Whatever they get by, and tax credits or whatever. But the fact is, teaching the children English and their parents speak a word, now there's something wrong there. There's something not quite right. You know, I don't understand that.
Well, it's been socially engineered on purpose. It's done to bring our country down purposefully.
It certainly seems like that.
It's what they call weaponized migration. It's working as a weapon. It's a war without firing bullets. It's a war.
And of course, the other side to it is that a thing called white flight. Have you heard of that expression, white flight, where if you get enough people from one area, if it gets saturated with immigrants from another country that can't speak your language and all the rest of it, then the white people that were born in that area tend to move out.
Yeah.
Which means even more immigrants can go into that area and fill it up, and then it becomes dominated by.
It just seems to me, Jeff, this whole tragic event happened at Grenfell Towers. It never should. It's a tragic thing, right? But there's something strange about it all, and I'm not going to go into conspiracies and all the rest of this.
Right.
And you'd have good grounds for it, I know. But at the end of the day, there seems to be a lack of communication in all of this. A lack of communication. Like if that area, that tower block and around that area, like a different country to the council or the management place that was meant to be running the maintenance and the upkeep and everything, like if they couldn't speak each other's tongue, what on earth? It's like it's a complete station on steroids, because one can't reason with the other. And this is in Kensington, in London, for crying out loud. So, you know, there's something strange underneath it all, and I think to do with.
It's intentionally confounded minds. It's intentional, and then you get all those people that have been reframed.
And the refusal to integrate. Now there's this political movement where one is pitching against just people, because ordinary I mean you and people wherever they come from in the world, it's the politicians that make the divisions, as we know. It's the politicians. I don't care who they are. I don't want whether he's got a messianical name and his name's Corbyn or what. I don't care who they are.
They're all doing
the same. Yes, yeah. And this is and people are going to these people, asking them for some type of answer. You're not going to get an answer from. Common sense don't register in their head because it
exactly. That's what we need. We need common sense, not common purpose.
Said Paul. Well, yeah.
But there you go. I mean, what do we know? And this RB says, oh, he said, no. He said, I could talk all day. He said, it's nice to talk to a sensible. He called me a good man. I mean, I've never met the guy, a Persian, never met in my life.
Right.
Yeah, I thought he was going to shake my hand off because he said it's nice to talk to somebody who's speaking common sense, you know.
Well, that's.
And he said, and you know.
Isn't it? They seldom address things in a common sense way. They approach everything from an ideological method, and they don't examine what the technical problems are and find technical solutions. They just produce opinions and ideologies and all this sort of stuff, which have no relevance, which have absolutely no relevance and basis in fact. What we need is technical solutions to technical problems. So what our government should be doing is employing technicians, people with technical capabilities and specialities in whatever field that's necessary to come up with the answers that and solutions that are needed to society's problems. Now, I think that would be what you would call a meritocracy.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to be, especially when you got somebody like our defence minister, Fallon. His speciality was children's nurseries.
Well, this is the madness that we've inherited, I'm afraid. What can you say? What can you say?
What's children's nurseries got to do with defence, unless he's in the sandbox playing with plastic soldiers?
Right. We wonder why they should be in the political field at all. You know, with those sort of, if that's their level of qualifications or their field of expertise, they shouldn't even be in the position of running a country. What we need is people with technical abilities in specialised fields to sort out the relevant problems that we've got. And I think government needs to take a very long sit back and think about that, what we've just said, because without the proper technical solutions, you know, to the technical problems, you're not going to get anywhere. Things are just going to go from bad to worse.
I don't actually believe they've got the brain power to self check themselves through. Because all in their minds, they're right, and that's all they think is they are right.
Well, you see, Paul, I think, you know, morals and common sense don't do any money.
Yeah.
You don't get paid for money. You don't get paid by money for common sense and morals. Oh, no, because that's not worth tuppence.
Yeah, money.
You don't get talking common sense and having morals, not in this world today. And that's why it doesn't make any sense.
Money doesn't solve problems, does it? Money does not solve technical problems. And you know, if you've got one problem and you haven't got the technical solution, you can throw money at it all bloody day long, and you're not going to get the problem solved. It's just going to get swept under the rug, and you're going to have delays and so on and so forth, and a lot of pussyfooting around, and nothing's going to get done. So
I'm afraid in the halls and corridors of Parliament, there's loads of lumpy, bumpy carpets, mate.
Yeah, I can quite see what you're saying there, Paul. Yeah, definitely. Well, this is the throw a few £100 million at something, and if it don't get solved, they'll just come back and say, oh, well, we've had to delay it because blah, 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 we haven't got enough resources or whatever. So they'll just throw some more money at it, and hopefully it just solves itself. That's their attitude.
And the trouble is they work on sound bites all the time. You don't get anywhere with a sound bite. You need a complete meal to sort things out.
Right, absolutely.
Well, no, if nothing gets done, you think that's common sense. If this thing, nothing gets done, does it?
Yeah.
I'm paying for doing nothing. People want money for nothing. So they don't want to do anything, so nothing's going to be done.
Right. Well, the attitude is, you know, if you're in... I've seen an article, Stav. I've seen an article about the BBC and the way that they were using the taxpayers' money, or the license payers' money, I should say, to fund their different lifestyles and habits. And they had some sort of system whereby some bloke was working for the BBC, and he was only spending X amount out of his expenses, and the boss turned up and said to him something like, "What are you doing? You're not spending enough. Spend more money."
Yeah.
You know, instead of buying a £10 yucca plant to furnish the lobby or whatever, he was saying go out and spend £150 on a yucca plant, because you're going to.
And therein the problem lies. Therein the problem lies.
Yeah, he said you're going to ruin it for the rest of us, and we're going to lose our expenses. What are you doing? Spend more, you know, pointlessly. So this is the sort of madness that we're up against. I'm afraid.
Well, of course, there was the reverse psychology with governments, isn't there? The more people, the more government you're going to get.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Yeah, yeah.
You know, exactly. It's kind of like a reverse psychology, isn't it? Where people think it works the other way around. Well, it don't. It works the other way. If you call, help me, help me, help me, oh, they're going to give you more help.
So to reduce the size of the state, what we need to do is to say to government to minimise itself, and you know, just leave us the hell alone, because it's us that solves ultimately.
Bring back common bloody sense, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's people asking for this, asking people to. In any case, what good is it? Oh, point the finger. That's the reason why. Everybody, it's a human. If you use, I lost a relative the other day, and you know, one of the first things that people put in their mind, oh, how old was she? Oh, did she have this? Did she have that? Got to blame something. It's always blaming someone or something. That's the reason why, and let's get that. And if we find the answer, we can fix all the world's problems.
I don't really. There's with any of these things, there's no one answer or one. There's no one magic bullet that's going to solve all these problems. What we need to do is, people do that because they want to recognise who's at fault so that they can fix the problem. But of course, it's a mixture of all sorts of things. There's a lot of aspects to it. It's very complex. So
the thing is, people need to fix it for themselves. Politicians.
Well, if we didn't have the
you know,
yeah,
significant.
The trouble is they've put laws in the way to stop us from fixing ourselves. They've got laws to stop us doing it.
That's what I was saying.
You'll have to stop. People are going to stand up, haven't they? At the end of they're not going to take it anymore. These thing in Kensington, I don't blame them. I mean, they're going to cause a lot of unrest because they're justified because they've lost their loved ones. They're just not going to take it anymore. So in the end of the day, people turn around and they say, well, if you're not going to let me fix it, actual fact, I don't give a monkey's what you think. I'm going to fix it, and you'll have to do what you've got to do, and I'll have to do what I've got to do from there. I'm not promoting violence. I'm not promoting anything. I don't advocate any of that. But come on, just get some bloody common sense going, people. You know, let's try and sort this out. And it's going to come down to the people. It always does. The other politicians and these ones who dressed them up as the Messiah, and I'm going to fix it for you, and we're going to get rid of all the baddies. What a load of old bollocks, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, a lot of things could be done with this Grenfell Tower situation. If we, get back on topic, I mean, for a start, if they believe that it's the cladding that caused or was part of the problem, then remove it from, recall it like you would do with a faulty car or something. Recall it, get it all off of all these buildings. That particular type of cladding has to go. That's the first thing I would do. Then I would install sprinklers and make it mandatory in these buildings that they've got a sprinkler system set up. And things like that. There's all sorts of things they could do to improve the situation and to reduce the risks.
Yeah, I know, but let's be honest. If we was in that block and we was that guy whose fridge exploded and you had a fire extinguisher, you wouldn't mess about far out. You wouldn't ask a politician or a fireman because you'll know there's 100 or 500 other people above you. If it gets out of hand, the fire brigade ain't going to be able to do anything about it. So you're going to do something about it yourself. You've got common sense.
No, you pack a case and you go on holiday instead.
Well,
I know, Paul.
that does seem a bit odd,
but well, to me, that just tells me it was pre-scripted, pre-planned. I mean, who would pack a bag when they've already tried they said they tried to put the fire out? Who would then go and pack a bag when they realised that it's overtaken? Who would go and pack a bag? No, they get out there and sound the alarm.
Well, Nick is telling me that he had worked in London and that area, or wherever in the country, and he's a qualified proper electrician, and he had contract fitting fire alarms, and he couldn't get the people out of bed to open their door to let you fit the fire alarms.
Sorry, he couldn't get people to what?
People to get out of bed in the middle of the day, allow him in to fit the fire alarm.
God, right.
Can you believe that? That's the truth.
Well, I mean,
because people have lost their common sense.
Well, with the council staff, what you do is you get a letter in the post from the council and they say a workman needs access to your property to put in blah, 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 whatever. And it's your duty as a tenant, as part of the tenancy agreement, to make sure you're there, to let them in and let them carry out their work, whatever it is, whether it's gas servicing an appliance like a boiler or a gas.
What happens if they won't let you in? Down, illegal entry or unlawful entry.
This is
bailiffs in.
Well, surely then legal proceedings should start against the person if they're not allowing people in for the owners to fit safety precautions.
It should be part of the tenancy agreement. And break that, because if they break that, they're putting
common sense. Who's got common sense? I've got common sense. You've got common sense. A lot of people have got common sense. Unfortunately, corporations who run governments, as we know, and they have no common sense, and they go, I want to get my money, the contract up. I want my money. Put in my note, you wouldn't let me in, and that flat is done because I want my money for the contract. And that is what's happened all over the country. In all, window fitting too. I can tell you a story about a guy who used to work in blocks of flats in London when they built them. And well, not after they built them, had a new UPVC windows fitted, a multi-story block. He was actually taking the window, and there were people in the bed who wouldn't even get out. Out.
Yes. It's incredible, isn't it? It's absolutely incredible. I mean, this is for their benefit. You know, this is for their benefit. An improvement in their lifestyle by having double glazing put in, which saves them on heating bills, and they could at least have the decency to let the workmen in and you know, get out of bloody bed. I mean, you know, it's for their benefit, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Well, at the end of the day, it's not the people's fault, because, you know, they used to live in a certain way and they take it for granted. That's how people live. But the problem is with contractors who get through government contracts, who earn their money for doing as less as they can, and they don't want to stop that money. And that's what you get with slovenly, sloppy, no common sense governments and councils are awash of this country. It's disgusting. The wastage is unreal, right? Like I say, I'll say it again. There's no way those people should have been living in Grenfell Towers from the get-go. That should be for even people suspected, and that guy put on that blog, you know, that should have been, that event should never have happened, never should have happened, because, and it all comes down to contracts, private corporations, backhanders wanting their money, and not being stopped from getting their money by crook. And that's a lot of the breakdown in that. I would say, that's a run short, but I've heard contractors who've done the work and they've told me that.
Right, but there's definitely enough rules and regulations in place to make sure these things do happen, because you know, for all these type of things, you've got countless rules and regulations, health and safety, and you know, it applies not just to count.
But if the I've got a block off right opposite me now, going up a 4-story block on a postage stamp of grass that they should have let be, because people walk their dogs. It's a tiny bit of grass. It's all it was, but they squeezed in. That's 30 flats in 4, nothing but problems since they started building it, with getting in there, jumping on the scaffolding. And I've warned the contractor. I said, you want to get a security guard, because all weekend I've got kids up there 4 o'clock in the morning with mobile phones shouting, jumping off they could kill themselves. Couldn't even put a CCTV camera in there.
It's incredible.
Build the bloody barricade round it, more than 6 foot, which they can just jump over, or lift up the fencing. To them, you know, you want to be very careful, Mr. Contractor. I found out the firm, I said, because there's a Trespassers Liability Act, and if any robber, any child gets hurt because you didn't provide enough security to stop them getting them, they can sue your arsehole off.
Yeah.
In there to thieve something.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
you know what? I told the manager that of the corporation, the company that's building it, and they still do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Can't tell these people. They'll risk everything, and down to the tiniest thing to make a lot. When you say, look, you're being stupid. If somebody gets out there, basically, I just didn't want kids getting in there, and they've been getting in there, and them smashing themselves or killing themselves or breaking legs because they're only kids. You know, kids are going to be kids.
I think you can quite safely say, Stav, that a lot of the motivating factors behind a lot of these problems are money related. There again, so this is why I believe a resource-based society would be much more beneficial, because there'd be no need to cut corners on the costs of different materials and things like that, because there wouldn't be any cost attached to it in the first place.
My dad saying, and skin a fart.
Right, skin a fart.
Will.
Right.
Yeah.
Skim. AIM.
Any tiny cost to them.
Yeah.
Any tiny cost, and yet they make hundreds of thousands out of the contract. But any cost extra, they won't have a penny.
That is the very nature and epitome of business, because, you know, with any business, you minimize your outgoings, you maximize your incomings. It's common economics, you know. So you're always going to get the lowest level of whatever you need for the maximum price that they can get away with charging you for. So, you know, it's always going to be the same in that way, I'm afraid. As long as we've got money as our driving force, that's not going to change, ever. Sadly.
Well, all of these things about what Paul done with his videos and the combustion and the, you know, stories that have come out of this very, very tragic event, all of these things we talked about tonight, I think you can probably take a bit from them all and say, well, they're the circumstances. The circumstances, there's plenty of them for the event to have happened, but it should not have happened if common sense was used and money in the way.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would definitely agree with your sentiments there, Stav. And I think we basically more or less covered everything tonight, haven't we, that we can regarding the Grenfell situation.
Yeah, the bit that really got me is the guy packing his suitcase. That's really knocked me for six, that one.
Mind you, I mean, you know, like Einstein said, there's two things in the universe. No, there are two things that are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. Although I'm not sure about the former. In other words, he's sure that there's infinite stupidity.
Yeah.
So, you know, people do stupid things in the heat of the moment. Like you say, some people, when the chip pan catches on fire, they'll throw water under the fat or under the oil, and bingo, you've got an instant incendiary device. You know, people do things like that. Sadly, this is just about accidents do happen. I mean, there might not be any conspiracy theory behind it.
But a lot of this, in them cases, it's just ignorance and it's not being intelligent on the subject. But these people that put the cladding on, these are supposed to be intelligent people.
Right. Well, I'm afraid intelligence is one of those things that in some cases are in short supply with some people. So you can't always guarantee a good outcome with anything in this life. I'm afraid we live in a very chaotic and imperfect universe, and that's not going to change anytime soon. There's always going to be accidents. There's always going to be acts of God, what people call them, which is like acts of nature or whatever. And you know, not everything is necessarily a conspiracy theory, or you know, it could be just a set of or a chain of events that unfolded to manifest into what happened, and perfectly innocently and just tragically. So you know, we will never, some things we will never know, I'm afraid. We're not always going to find the answers to these things, although the questions should definitely be asked.
Most definitely. The only trouble is answers should be forthcoming.
Well, there definitely needs to be an improvement in the communication between the mainstream media and things like that. Questions need to be asked by these journalists.
And these councils and these TCMOs and that, they should be listening to the residents.
Well, if they can understand the language, it helps. Yeah.
We covered pretty much most of it, I think. Let's just well, I'm not going to hope, because I know it's not going to happen, but they're going to the political be just like a political football, and it's a shame really, because the real, I think, won't be asked.
It's the victims
the real
that pay
answers.
the price.
Will not be as it always is, because they're going to just turn it into some crap to point fingers, to make people not vote for them and vote for not vote for them and vote themselves, and just think it's just so.
The Tories will slag off the response of the Labour Party. The Labour Party will slag off the response of the Tory Party, all to gain a bit of political will from the voters.
Yeah.
That's always the way.
All right then, boys. And
A good one.
Thanks very much for running it, Jeff and Paul. I'm on earlier on, but this old computer, I think the fan stopped working and the CPU getting red hot. What it is. So we'll probably get another one out tomorrow.
Well, I'll catch you on the flip side, guys. Till then, be good and be happy.
Yeah. And we'll catch you all later. If you can't be good, be bad, and if you can't be bad, then be whatever you want. Laters, guys.
Adios.